Let's take a moment to now maybe technically define an addiction. I'm sure everybody once in a while has said, man, I'm addicted to Netflix and I'm addicted to chocolate and I'm addicted to this. But how does one truly define an addiction in a clinical setting?
Yeah, so when I use the term addiction, I'm referring to a form of psychopathology, not the more common, colloquial, casual use of, I'm addicted to Netflix. Although, you could argue that we actually are addicted to Netflix, and we'll probably get there. So the diagnosis of addiction is based on what we call phenomenology. These are patterns of behavior that repeat themselves across individuals with unique temperaments, demographics, time periods, geographic locations. There is no brain scan or blood test to diagnose addiction, although we know that addiction is characterized by distinct brain changes. We're just not at a state of the art where we can diagnose it based on that. So it's still based on patterns of behavior that can broadly be summarized as the 4 C's plus tolerance and withdrawal. So the 4 C's are out of control use, compulsive use, cravings, and continued use despite consequences. Now, as you can imagine, that phenomenology is going to be a judgment call, right? And it's going to be based on both that individual's subjective endorsement of having those kinds of issues, plus the observation of other people around them, which is to say, if you went to 10 different psychiatrists, you might get 10 different diagnoses. And that is true for all mental health disorders. So we don't have any brain scans or blood tests to diagnose any mental health disorder. The entire DSM, or Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is our kind of codification of different buckets that we put people in for different forms of psychopathology, is completely based on phenomenology. So you have the 4 C's, and then you have tolerance and withdrawal. So those are very clear evidence of physiologic changes. Psychological changes are also physiologic changes, but here we're talking about more obvious manifestations of it being, say, a physical, chemical body reaction. Tolerance is the phenomenon of finding that the drug stops working over time. And that we need more and more to get the same effect, or more potent forms. And tolerance is overcome by using more often, or overcoming tolerance by changing the delivery mechanism. Instead of, orally ingesting, maybe smoking or injecting, or overcoming tolerance by changing slightly the chemical combination or moiety, or combining drugs together so that the brain sees something that's similar but slightly novel. And then, in addition to tolerance, there's the phenomenon of withdrawal, which is to say, when I cut back or stop using, my body reacts in a very predictable fashion, which is most often the opposite of whatever the intoxicant causes. So if I'm taking a stimulant like cocaine or meth or nicotine or caffeine, and I try to stop using, my withdrawal phenomenon will feel like sedation, lethargy, inattention. If I'm using a sedative, like alcohol, then my withdrawal phenomenon will be restlessness, jitteriness, maybe even seizures, maybe even life-threatening seizures in the case of alcohol and benzodiazepines. And also keep in mind that the universal symptoms of withdrawal from any addictive substance are anxiety, irritability, insomnia, dysphoria, and craving. And I always like to mention that because I'll have like cannabis users or alcohol users come in and say, well, I don't have any withdrawal, so therefore I'm not addicted. Well, did you feel anxious? Did you feel restless? Were you unable to sleep? Were you in craving mind? Because those are all the actions, so to speak, that our brain takes to get us to try to use again.